Every 4 years, the entire planet stops. Factories slow down, courts adjourn early, hospitals report a drop in non-emergency admissions. In 2022, 1.5 billion people watched a single football match. Not a war, not a moon landing, a game. And the strangest part is that nobody planned for it to get this big. Nobody sat in a room in 1930 and said, "In 90 years, this tournament will be the most watched event in human history." It happened the way most enormous things happen. Slowly, then all at once. To understand how a football tournament became the gravitational center of the entire sporting world, you have to start not with the sport itself, but with the problem it was trying to solve. In the early 20th century, football was spreading faster than anyone could govern it. By 1900, the game had already jumped from England to Europe, to South America, to parts of Africa and Asia. But there was no global authority, no unified rules, no single competition that meant anything beyond your own continent. FIFA was founded in 1904 by 7 countries sitting in a room in Paris. Not powerhouses, not empires of the game. 7 small football associations that wanted structure. For the first 2 decades, FIFA did almost nothing of consequence. It had no competition, no product, no reason for anyone outside of football administration to care it existed. That changed with one man and one argument. Jules Rimet, a French lawyer who became FIFA president in 1921, believed that football could do something no politician had managed to do after the First World War. He believed it could make countries face each other without weapons. The first World Cup took place in Uruguay in 1930. 13 teams, 1 host nation, no television, no global broadcast of any kind. The tournament was so uncertain that several European nations refused to make the 3-week boat journey to South America to compete. Uruguay won. The trophy was handed over. The boats went home. And the world barely noticed. But something had started. The 1,934 and 1,938 tournaments were held in Europe under the shadow of rising fascism. Mussolini used the 1,934 tournament in Italy as a propaganda instrument. Referees were pressured, results were disputed, and Italy won both times under conditions that historians still argue about today. The World Cup survived it, and in surviving it, it proved something important. Even when governments tried to corrupt the tournament, people kept watching. The game was bigger than the politics around it. After the Second World War, the 1,950 tournament in Brazil produced the single most shocking result in the history of the competition. The United States defeated England 1-0. England, the nation that invented the sport, beaten by a country that barely played it. The result was so unexpected that several European newspapers initially assumed it was a misprint and published the score as 10-1 in England's favour. That match did something for the World Cup that no marketing campaign ever could. It proved that anything could happen. And an event where anything can happen is an event that everyone needs to watch. Television changed everything in 1954. The West Germany vs. Hungary final was the first World Cup match broadcast live on television across multiple countries. 40 million people watched it. That number is modest by today's standards. But in 1954, it was the largest simultaneous television audience ever recorded for a sporting event. The broadcasters noticed, the sponsors noticed, FIFA noticed. The tournament was no longer just a football competition. It was a delivery mechanism for the largest captive audience on Earth. Then came 1,970, and everything changed again. The Mexico World Cup was the first tournament broadcast in color television globally. The images that came out of that tournament, the green of the pitch, the vivid kits, the Brazilian team in their iconic yellow, were unlike anything audiences had ever seen on a screen before. Brazil won with a style of football so beautiful that journalists ran out of words for it. Pelé, Jairzinho, Tostão, Rivellino, the 1,970 Brazilian squad is still debated as the greatest football team ever assembled, and the whole world watched them play in color for the first time. By the time the 1986 tournament arrived in Mexico, Diego Maradona had given the World Cup something it had never had before: a single, undeniable protagonist. In one match against England, he scored what would be called the goal of the century, a run from his own half, past 5 defenders, past the goalkeeper, into the net. 60 seconds later, it was on every screen on Earth. The World Cup now had the thing that all great stories need: a hero whose talent was so extreme it felt like myth. The 1990s brought satellite, television, and then the internet, and the World Cup expanded its reach into territories it had never penetrated: Asia, the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa. By 1,998 inches France, the tournament had 32 teams for the first time, representing every corner of the planet. It was no longer a European and South American competition with guests. It was genuinely global. The 2002 tournament in South Korea and Japan shattered every remaining assumption about who the World Cup belonged to. South Korea reached the semi-finals. For the first time, an Asian nation had gone that deep in the competition. The viewing figures across Asia were unlike anything previously recorded. The World Cup had found an entirely new billion people who cared about it. And then came 2022. Qatar, a country of 3 million people hosting the largest sporting event on Earth. 1.5 billion people watching the Argentina versus France final. 2 of the greatest players in the history of the sport, Mbappe and Messi, producing a match so extraordinary that people who had never watched football in their lives sat in front of their screens until the final penalty. The World Cup is not the biggest sporting event on Earth because of marketing. It is the biggest sporting event on Earth because it is the only competition where every country on the planet has a stake in the outcome. The Olympics comes close. But no Olympic event produces the specific feeling of an entire nation holding its breath on a single moment. A penalty kick, a header, a goalkeeper's dive. One moment, one nation, one result. That is what Jules Rimet saw in 1921 when he proposed a tournament that everyone told him was impractical. He did not see a football competition. He saw the only language every country on Earth already spoke. And 90 years later, 1.5 billion people proved him right.